and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to break down 3 perspectives of group offending processes. First of all, let's consider why it is important that we look at how criminal groups form. So far there has been very little research on this area. The individualistic approach is consistent with the dominant Western legal tradition that also focuses on individual accountability. This neglects the group approach, and there is little understanding of why individuals commit crime as a group, as it is often believed that crime is committed due to an individual's choice, and therefore placing responsibility for their actions solely upon themselves. However, group processes are very important. Self-esteem is often based on your group membership. If there is group success, this leads to a high group self-esteem and also a high personal self-esteem. There's also an aspect called collective narcissism, which is an emotional investment in an unrealistic belief about the in-group's greatness, which predicts intergroup aggressiveness, which is where you always think that your group is better than everyone else's. So now let's look at 3 theoretical perspectives of group offending processes, how these form, and why. The first theoretical perspective we're going to look at is social identity theory by Tajfel and Turner. And this is broken down into 3 aspects: social categorization, social influence, and pluralistic ignorance. So social categorization allows people to understand their social environment, categorize simplified behavior based on context. People can have multiple categories within this. Categorization serves as a self-referencing function. Some categorizations are more prevalent than others. For example, if you identify as a student, this may be more prevalent than identifying as a specific type of student, such as a psychology student. Social influence. This is broken down into informational social influence and normative social influence. Informational social influence is where people look to others to gain an objective understanding of the world, and they get information. Normative social influence is where people may conform to social norms in order to gain social approval. Pluralistic ignorance. The idea that when in a group, there are norms which determine how you should act in situations, but we might not want to respond in that way, however we go along with the norm anyway. This occurs where people privately reject a social norm, but behave in a manner consistent with this norm because they perceive that others in their group accept the norm. A good example of this is getting in a car with someone you know is over the drinking limit, but you don't want to say no as they're a friend. The second theoretical perspective is social dominance theory by Sidanius and Pratto in 1999. Our social dominance orientation, which means the degree to which we endorse hierarchical distinctions, prescribes our behaviour via our motivation to achieve or maintain a high status. For example, younger people might see themselves at the top of the hierarchy compared to older people, as they have more life ahead of them. This gives them a higher perception of high social dominance orientation, and vice versa for old people thinking young people are below them. Orientation is more individual preference, and this can determine one's behaviour. There are 3 main types of categories: age, gender, or an arbitrary set. For example, sports team, gangs, degrees. These form socially, and you can join and leave the group, so they are interchangeable. You'll be motivated to see your own group as the best and the biggest. In relation to crime, for example, gangs often want to be the highest status gang. And the third theoretical perspective we're going to look at is moral disengagement, which is us as individuals acting to represent the group. We morally justify what we do as being in the interests of the group and to preserve group respect. For example, this goes back to the earlier point of collective narcissism, or group offending that occurs may be due to a threat or conflict of group interests. There is an interesting effect called the black sheep effect, which is where the in-group is often harsher of its own in-group members who deviate than someone who is an out-group member who is also deviating, and this is because in-group members are not expected to go against the group ever. Therefore, the group will harm or kick out those who deviate. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this interesting.